Ah, Meta, Facebook's parent company, the gang that couldn't shoot straight if they were holding an assault rifle, made of straight lines. And guess what? They've done it again. The EU is giving Meta the stink eye, and this time it's personal. See, the EU has this new law, the Digital Services Act, or DSA, and it's basically the digital equivalent of a stern talking to from your grandma. Except instead of guilt trips, it uses massive fines. The issue? Meta shut down CrowdTangle, a tool used to track, you guessed it, disinformation. You know, those pesky little lies that spread faster than a bad case of the clap at a tech conference. The EU wants to know why Meta killed off their digital pest control, especially right before a major election. Shocking, I know. A tech company doing something shady before an election. You could have knocked me over with a feather. A feather made of all the cease and desist letters Facebook has ignored over the years. Meta has until September 6th to explain themselves. That's like a million years in internet time. What will they come up with? Will they blame it on Russian hackers, teenage interns, Mark Zuckerberg's robot clone that's slowly taking over the world? Stay tuned. So what exactly did CrowdTangle do? And why should we care? Imagine a world where you could actually see how lies spread online, where you could identify the sources of bullshit and track its journey through the digital sewer. That's what CrowdTangle was like, except instead of being a magical world, it was a website. And instead of unicorns and rainbows, it was mostly just Nazis and conspiracy theories.
Journalists and researchers used CrowdTangle to see what was trending on Facebook and Instagram. Were people sharing articles about kittens and puppies? Or were they sharing articles about how vaccines cause autism and the Earth is flat? Spoiler alert, it was mostly the latter.
CrowdTangle helped expose the dark underbelly of social media, and Meta, in their infinite wisdom, decided to shut it down. Now, you might be thinking, so what if Meta shut down some website? I never even heard of CrowdTangle before. And to that I say, bless your heart. You see, the timing of this whole debacle is about as subtle as a brick to the face. The EU is having a big election soon, and guess what happens during elections? That's right, disinformation runs wild. It's like a digital version of those creepy carnival games where you try to shoot a stream of water into a clown's mouth to make it explode, except instead of water, it's lies. And instead of a clown's mouth, it's your Uncle Gary's Facebook feed. And instead of exploding, he just posts angry rants about how the election was rigged.
The EU is worried that without CrowdTangle, they'll be playing whack-a-mole with election interference. And let's be honest, Meta's track record with this kind of stuff is about as impressive as a wet paper bag.
Section 4, Meta's solution, a masterclass in avoiding the point. So, how did Meta respond to all this? Did they apologize? Did they vow to do better? Did they offer to personally hand-deliver cookies to every person in Europe? Of course not.
They did what any self-respecting tech giant would do. They threw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and hoped something would stick. They introduced some new features claiming they would address the concerns about transparency. They patted themselves on the back, declared victory, and promptly went back to ignoring the problem. It was like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound and saying, "There, all better."
Europe says we've had enough.
The EU Commission has made it clear that they are not satisfied with Meta's response. They believe that these so-called solutions are nothing more than a distraction from the real issue at hand. We need genuine transparency, not just empty promises and half-hearted measures. The citizens of Europe deserve to know what's happening on these platforms and how it affects their lives.
The EU Commission is determined to hold Meta accountable and ensure that real changes are made. They are exploring all available options to enforce stricter regulations and protect the interests of their citizens. It's not just about Europe.
As an EU citizen, I believe that transparency in social media is crucial. But this isn't just a European issue. People all over the world are affected by the lack of transparency from tech giants like Meta. We need a global movement to demand accountability and ensure that these companies operate with the public's best interests in mind.
The call for transparency is growing louder, and it's not just coming from Europe. Citizens, researchers, and policymakers worldwide are joining forces to push for meaningful change. The fight for transparency is a global one, and it's only just beginning.